Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album, the sophomore album from Phillip Phillips, titled Behind the Lights. So as I've mentioned a couple of times before, I don't really watch reality TV. Part of it is a factor of me not owning a TV and getting anything that I want to watch online, but partially because most of the reality singing competitions just don't really interest me. I mean, American Idol might have been a big deal about a decade ago, but you can't say it is in the same way right now. Or can you? The late period American Idol winners haven't been all that bad upon closer examination. After all, I liked more of Scotty McCreery's sophomore album, See You Tonight, than I was expecting, even so far as to naming Feel Good Summer Song as one of my favorite tracks of 2013, pretty high on that list too. But one of the late period winners from that show that really struck my attention, that was Phillip Phillips, a folk singer-songwriter who stepped up to the plate with a lot more character and personality than you normally see on reality show winners. And his debut album was surprisingly good in that regard, bucking against the trend of Idol winners delivering flavorless garbage on their debut record in order to maintain as much of their Idol audience as possible. Now, that's not saying that that debut album was flawless. Plenty of critics made the Dave Matthews Band comparison, and that's not entirely without merit, especially considering the frontman with solid acoustic guitar skills and a grittier voicing about artfully crafted, if broadly sketched, subject matter. Now, for me, his production was just a little bit cleaner than I normally like to see in folk rock, and there were definitely moments of lyrical clumsiness in his songwriting that stood out for me. But then again, the guy's also younger than me. The album was rushed together in around 2 months, and yeah, it was his debut album, so I was willing to be forgiving here. And thus, coming into his sophomore album, Behind the Light, I wondered if Phillip Phillips might actually stand out a little bit better now that the brief folk rock revival of late 2012 had petered out somewhat. So I stepped up and gave Behind the Light a couple of listens. How'd it go? Well, it's pretty good. An improvement from his last album, but at the same time, it's also the kind of album that doesn't really give me a lot to talk about because it's only an incremental improvement. It's still good, not great. Phillip Phillips is still playing in much of the very same territory as his debut album, pretty much across the board too. And while there definitely is some standout tracks that I do like, I don't really find this album as a whole all that gripping, which honestly is kind of frustrating because I get the feeling that I should like this record and like Phillip Phillips a fair bit more than I do, so let's try to figure out why. So let's start with Phillip Phillips himself. And really, I don't have any complaints. I've always really liked this guy's voice for its raspy exuberance and very real earnest passion. And he has the dynamic range and emotional delivery. He's got it down excellently. This guy's got real charisma. I will stress though that he's a better fit for rollicking folk music that requires him to get a little bit louder than some of the grimmer post-grunge inspired rock tracks that pop up on this album. Hell, anger in general seems to be a little bit of a difficult emotion for Phillip Phillips, as evidenced most on the song Trigger, a darker song exploring a partner's depression in a relationship. And while Phillips is definitely convincing with the whole frustrated helplessness that he goes for, he doesn't quite have the rawness to really pull off the howling that he tries on the chorus. That'd just be a better fit for an artist like Dave Grohl, for instance. And you know what? It's not just in the vocals either that there's a problem with rock here, but in the instrumentation too. Songs like Lead On and Fly, they opt for a bit more of a rock direction, and I easily find them to be the weakest songs on this album. Mostly because the dreary post-grunge styling of those songs lacks a lot of the real flavor that the richer folk songs bring to the table. Now, this is mostly an issue of guitar tonal choice and the distortion. Fly has this oily guitar tone that does emphasize the melody, but doesn't really flatter it. The distortion doesn't do enough to amp up behind it. And while Lead On alternates between rollicking guitar and a really subdued piano melody, often covered up by brush cymbals and harmonized strings. In fact, if I was looking for an element in the instrumentation that stood out the most on this album, it'd probably be in the strings section. Smooth, very elegant, very tasteful. It crops up pretty much everywhere to mostly welcome effect, although I won't say it's entirely cohesive with Phillips' fast-paced and intricate guitar work. And while the acoustic guitar is excellent and easily stands out as having the best texture and flavor on this album, I do wish, and I just can't help but wish, that like on his last album, that his guitar production was just a little bit rougher and more distorted, a little grimier, had a little bit more of a prominent focus too in the mix. As it is, it fits together into the whole cohesive picture of this album. And the record's best moments are when Phillip Phillips goes for that sort of broad, powerful drama that its instrumentation can just match beautifully. Now this is especially true when the production goes for a thicker, more cacophonous sound on songs like Searchlight, Fool for You, and Midnight Sun. Easily, for me, the highlights of this album. And it's at this point that the comparison really can't be ignored. Not to the Dave Matthews Band, but because the vocal delivery to the backing chorus and the pounding instrumentation and the guitar work driving the pace, it's very easy to compare Phillip Phillips to Mumford & Sons, especially in both of their bands' Too Smooth production. And you know what? I'd be lying if I said that anything that Phillip Phillips delivers on this record reaches the heights of pop folk rock songs like Little Lion Man or Hopeless Wanderer, at least in terms of melodic composition. So, in order to differentiate them, we need to look at lyrics and themes. And you know what? At first glance, it would seem that Phillip Phillips starts to fall a little short here. His songwriting just isn't as colorful or flavorful, often sticking to relationship drama cast in very stark tones and very simple language. And there are plenty of times where his songwriting can start treading into very heavily cliched territory, like on Alive Again, which featured a line like a flame on fire. Well, what else would a flame be on? Which he then proceeds to rhyme with desire. Or take the lead single, Raging Fire, which features the line, "Yeah, we'll live until we die." That is how living typically works, I reckon, outside of some zombie situation. But you know what? To be fair, outside of some questionable moments like that, I'd argue Phillip Phillips actually makes his simplicity in his songwriting really work for him, and rings out some really solid nuance along the way, either through his vocal delivery or through the lyrics themselves. Take Searchlight, for instance. It could have been intolerable as one of those not overused songs that Phillip Phillips tends to make, and he's just trying to win her back, but you know what? Phillip Phillips' palpable desperation in the sense that he's never going to find that girl, and the fact that he never finds her in the song in question, makes the song that much stronger and adds that much more emotional weight. Then take the song Open Your Eyes, which is a song directed at a friend who's trying to be something that he's not, and Phillips' advice just to embrace the great strengths that he already has. You know what? That's uplifting. That's a solid enough message. I can dig with that. Fool for You goes in a little bit more personal, tackling the frustrating balance between love and one's dreams. And in a move you don't often see in this particular sort of song, Phillip Phillips plays for the romantic and chooses love, and more importantly, there's no remorse here. He sincerely believes that's what he wants, and I'm not going to deny him that. And then there's songs like Thicket and Face, both songs that touch on mutually complicated relationships where Phillip Phillips isn't exactly in the right, and both songs are painted in a darker light to show exactly how his decisions in the relationship backfired to hurt both partners involved. Granted, it works a little bit better on Thicket with a little bit more poetry and framed as a little bit more of a retrospective, and the jittering string section definitely earns its keep in crafting that fatally cracked romantic atmosphere. Hell, even a song like Midnight Sun, which is basically a just follow your dreams track that could be slotted into a Disney movie without issue, it's got a great melody, it's got enough real dramatic swell, and Phillip Phillips really sells the song well enough, it works on its own. I can dig it. It's one of the best on the album. So yeah, in the end, I quite like this record. It's not gonna blow your mind, let me stress this. And the folk-inspired tracks on this album, they're significantly stronger than when Phillip Phillips goes for that post-grunge style of rock. But as I've said before, there's a certain power you can get for gunning for this sort of raw, heartfelt simplicity, and with solid execution. And Phillip Phillips connects a lot more often than he misses. And while I would have preferred a little bit more instrumental texture and more ambitious songwriting, you can tell this album is angled for the mainstream, and it's definitely a step in the right direction if he wants to appeal to that particular audience. So, you know what? I'm giving the album a 7 out of 10 and a recommendation. It does what it needs to do. If you're looking for some solid, mainstream accessible folk rock, Phillip Phillips, he's a very solid bet in that regard. And you know what? This album is worth a look. And you know, come to think about it, if Scotty McCreery and Phillip Phillips are the best of what American Idol has to offer these days, maybe we should aim to keep that show on a little longer. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. If there's anything else coming up that you'd like me to take a look at, or if there's any other albums covering that I might be able to take a look at, or if there's anything I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. So until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.